Most people believe success is about talent, luck, or timing. They believe that if you are smart enough, gifted enough, or born into the right situation, progress will naturally follow. This belief feels comfortable. It gives you an excuse when things do not work out, but it is also one of the most damaging myths you can accept because it shifts responsibility away from your daily choices and places it on forces you cannot control. The truth is quieter and less dramatic. Success is rarely blocked by lack of ability. It is blocked by the way the mind quietly misleads itself. You are not usually defeated by the world. You are defeated by the story you tell yourself about the world. And the most dangerous part is that this story feels reasonable. It feels logical. It feels true. This is how a cognitive bias works. It does not shout, it whispers. It does not attack you openly, it agrees with you. And that is why it sabotages your goals while convincing you that you are being sensible. You may believe that you are seeing things clearly. You may believe that you are being realistic. But realism, when filtered through bias, becomes a disguise for avoidance. Ask yourself this. How many times have you delayed action because you were waiting for the right moment? How many times have you lowered your standard because you told yourself it was more practical? How many times have you protected your comfort and called it wisdom? This is not a character flaw. This is a human pattern. The mind evolved to protect energy, avoid pain, and seek certainty. Goals demand the opposite. Goals require effort, discomfort, and risk, so the mind quietly pushes back. It does so by distorting your perception. It magnifies the cost of action, it minimizes the cost of delay, and it calls this balance. The first step to defeating this sabotage is to see it clearly, not emotionally, clearly. You must understand that progress is not blocked by dramatic failure. It is blocked by small, repeated decisions that feel harmless in the moment. One skipped session, one delayed conversation, one lowered expectation, one rationalized excuse, one day, then another, then another. Over time, these moments compound into distance between who you are and who you could have been. Think of success like building a bridge, stone by stone, across a river. No single stone gets you to the other side, but every missing stone leaves a gap. And most people do not fail because the river is too wide. They fail because they stop placing stones consistently. They look at the distance remaining and feel discouraged. They forget that the bridge was never built in one day. This is the invisible work behind success, the part no one applauds, the part that does not feel rewarding in the moment. It is the repetition of effort when there is no evidence yet that it is working. It is preparation without applause. It is discipline without recognition. It is showing up when the mind argues that it does not matter. Opportunity does not respond to intention. It responds to readiness. You do not rise to the level of your hopes. You fall to the level of your preparation. When opportunity arrives, it does not announce itself. It simply appears. And if you are prepared, it looks like luck. If you are not prepared, it looks like stress. There is a quiet law at work here. Preparation meeting opportunity creates progress. Opportunity without preparation creates regret. Preparation without opportunity creates patience. And patience is not wasted time. It is stored strength. Pressure reveals patterns. It does not create them. When life applies pressure, it exposes how you have been thinking, training, and deciding all along. Under pressure, your habits speak louder than your intentions. Your systems speak louder than your goals. Consider a professional who has spent years avoiding difficult conversations. They tell themselves they are being polite. They tell themselves timing matters. But under pressure, when a crisis hits, their avoidance becomes chaos. Problems grow. Trust erodes. Not because of the crisis, but because of the pattern that existed before it. Now consider another person, a student who studies only when deadlines approach. They believe stress sharpens their focus. They believe they work better under pressure. But when pressure increases, their understanding collapses. Gaps appear. Confidence fades. Again, not because pressure is unfair, but because pressure reveals preparation. Focus is not a personality trait, it is a protected resource, and in a distracted world, it must be guarded deliberately. Distraction is not always noise. Sometimes it is overthinking. Sometimes it is planning without execution. Sometimes it is consuming information instead of applying it. The mind convinces itself that it is being productive, but progress requires selection. You must choose what matters and ignore what does not. Ask yourself this: where does your attention go when no one is watching? That is where your future is being shaped, not by your intentions, by your habits of focus. Growth follows a simple sequence: learn, apply, evaluate, correct, persist. Most people stop after learning. They confuse knowledge with progress, but knowledge unused is only potential. It does not move your life. Application reveals truth. Evaluation reveals gaps. Correction creates improvement. Persistence turns effort into identity. Motivation feels powerful, but it is unreliable. Discipline is quieter, but it is dependable. Motivation responds to mood. Discipline responds to decision. Systems outperform emotions every time. When you build systems that support your goals, you reduce the power of bias. You no longer ask how you feel, you ask what is scheduled. Strategic patience is essential. Growth has seasons. There is a season of planting, a season of waiting, a season of harvesting. If you demand harvest during planting, you abandon the process too early. Time is not your enemy. Impatience is. Feedback is not criticism, it is information. Measurement is not judgment, it is guidance. When you measure your actions honestly, you gain control. What you measure, you can improve. What you avoid measuring, you surrender to chance. Momentum builds quietly. Like a flywheel, the early turns feel heavy, progress feels slow, but each consistent effort reduces resistance. Over time, movement creates energy. Energy creates confidence. Confidence creates identity, and identity sustains action. A breakthrough is not a moment, it is a lifestyle. It is the result of choosing truth over comfort, discipline over excuses, clarity over bias. One day, then another, and as you continue to build this way of living, you begin to notice something important. The voice that once sabotaged your goals grows quieter. Not because it disappears, but because you no longer obey it. You see it for what it is, a pattern, a suggestion, not a command. And this is where real change begins, when you stop arguing with the mind and start training it, when you stop waiting for certainty and start acting with clarity, when you understand that your goals are not defeated by difficulty, but subtle self-deception, and once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. You begin to move differently, you choose differently, you build differently. Because now, when hesitation appears, you pause and ask yourself a better question. Is this wisdom, or is this the bias that has delayed me before? And in that pause, you reclaim control. You remember that progress is earned in quiet moments of choice, not when everything feels easy, but when you decide to act despite the mind's resistance. This is how you begin to defeat the cognitive bias sabotaging your goals, not once, but daily, through awareness, through discipline, through patience, through persistence. And as this way of thinking settles into your routine, you start to notice another shift. Your confidence becomes steadier, not louder, not dramatic, just solid. You trust yourself more because you keep your word to yourself. And trust, once built, changes how you approach everything. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop waiting for permission. You act from principle instead of impulse. And that's when your goals stop feeling fragile. They become grounded, rooted, part of who you are becoming. And from that place, progress no longer feels forced. It feels aligned. It feels earned. It feels inevitable over time. Because you are no longer fighting the world. You are mastering the lens through which you see it. And that mastery is what quietly separates those who drift from those who move forward with purpose. Because once you understand this, you stop blaming circumstances. You stop blaming timing. You stop blaming other people. Not because those things do not matter at all, but because they are no longer your focus. You realize that control does not mean controlling outcomes. Control means controlling inputs, your effort, your habits, your standards, your thinking. This is where many people become uncomfortable, because taking control also means accepting responsibility. And responsibility removes excuses. It removes the comforting belief that success is reserved for someone else. It removes the illusion that you are waiting on the world to change. Instead, it quietly asks you to change first. The cognitive bias that sabotages your goals thrives on comfort. It prefers familiar patterns over effective ones. It prefers what feels safe over what creates growth. And it often disguises itself as intelligence. It sounds like careful planning. It sounds like caution. It sounds like patience. But there is a difference between patience and delay. There is a difference between wisdom and avoidance. Patience is active. Delay is passive. Patience continues to prepare while waiting. Delay waits without preparation. Patience refines skills. Delay refines excuses. Ask yourself which one has been shaping your days. You do not defeat bias by fighting your thoughts. You defeat it by questioning them. You slow down just enough to ask, is this belief helping me move forward or helping me stay comfortable? Is this decision aligned with my long-term goals or only my short-term relief? The mind will often exaggerate effort. It will tell you that starting is exhausting, that consistency is draining, that failure will be unbearable. But notice something important. The pain you imagine is almost always worse than the pain you experience, and the regret you feel from not acting is almost always heavier than the discomfort of trying. Your mind wants certainty before commitment. Growth demands commitment before certainty. This is a fundamental conflict, and the side you choose determines your direction. Think about how habits are formed, not through dramatic moments, but through repeated exposure. The more often you choose action over hesitation, the weaker the bias becomes. It does not vanish, but it loses authority. It becomes background noise instead of a decision maker. This is why systems matter more than willpower. Willpower fluctuates. Systems endure. When you remove decision-making from moments of weakness, you protect progress. You schedule the work. You define the process. You show up whether you feel inspired or not. And over time, the system carries you forward even on days when motivation is absent. There is a quiet confidence that comes from this approach. It is not emotional. It is earned. It comes from knowing that you will act regardless of mood, that you will adjust instead of quit, that you will learn instead of defend your ego. Ego is another ally of cognitive bias. Ego wants to be right. Growth wants to be effective. Ego avoids feedback. Growth seeks it. Ego protects identity. Growth evolves it. When you measure results honestly, you expose gaps. And gaps are not failures. They are instructions. Every adjustment you make is a signal of intelligence, not weakness. Stubbornness feels strong, but it slows progress. Flexibility feels uncertain, but it accelerates learning. Momentum is built through consistency, not intensity. A small action repeated daily outperforms a large action done occasionally. The flywheel does not move because of one hard push. It moves because of many steady ones. At first, progress is invisible. Then it becomes noticeable. Eventually, it becomes natural. This is where many people misunderstand breakthrough. They expect a sudden change, a dramatic shift. But real breakthroughs are quiet. They show up as ease where there was once resistance, as clarity where there was once doubt, as confidence where there was once doubt. And when this happens, you realize something powerful. You are no longer chasing your goals. You are living in alignment with them. They are no longer something you hope to achieve someday. They are something you are building daily. This alignment changes how you experience time. You stop rushing. You stop comparing. You stop measuring yourself against others because you are focused on your process, your pace, your standards. The world will always offer distractions, opinions, shortcuts, comparisons, but once you understand how bias works, you see these for what they are: tests of focus, invitations to drift, and you decline them, not out of fear, but out of clarity. You begin to protect your attention like a valuable asset, because it is. Where your attention goes, your effort follows. Where your effort goes, your results follow. And where your results go, your identity follows. Identity is the final layer of change. When you consistently act in alignment with your goals, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying. You begin to see yourself as someone who does. And once identity shifts, behavior follows naturally. You no longer ask, "Should I act today?" You ask, "How well will I act today?" You no longer debate whether discipline matters. You embody it. You no longer seek motivation. You rely on structure. This does not make life rigid, it makes it stable. It creates freedom, not restriction, because discipline removes chaos, and chaos is exhausting. Over time, the emotional noise quiets, decision fatigue decreases, confidence becomes calm. You trust your process, you trust your effort, and even when results are delayed, you do not panic, because you understand seasons, you understand compounding, you understand that consistency is undefeated. This understanding changes how you handle setbacks. You do not personalize them, you analyze them. You adjust, you continue. Because setbacks are not signals to stop, they are signals to refine. And as you refine, you grow, not just toward your goals, but as a person, more patient, more focused, more resilient, less reactive, less distracted, less controlled by comfort. This is what it means to defeat the cognitive bias sabotaging your goals, not by eliminating it, but by outgrowing its influence, by building habits stronger than excuses, by building clarity stronger than fear, by building systems stronger than moods. You begin to realize that progress is not mysterious, it is methodical, it is earned, it is available to anyone willing to do the quiet work consistently. And this realization is empowering because it puts the path forward in your hands. You do not need a new personality. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need to feel ready. You need to begin and then continue. One day, then another, then another. And as days turn into weeks and weeks into months, you look back and notice something remarkable. The distance you once feared is now behind you. The habits you once struggled with are now automatic. The identity you once admired is now familiar. This is the reward of disciplined thinking, not just achievement, but self-respect. The deep, steady confidence that comes from knowing you did not drift, you chose. And from this place, new goals emerge, not from insecurity, but from growth, not from comparison, but from curiosity. You aim higher, not because you feel pressured, but because you are capable. And you carry this lesson forward into your work, your relationships, your decisions. You recognize bias when it appears. You pause, you question, you choose intentionally. This is how mastery develops, quietly, gradually, inevitably. You may not feel different overnight, but if you stay with this approach, you will become different over time. Stronger in focus, clearer in thought, steadier in action. And one day, you will realize that the greatest victory was not reaching a specific goal. It was learning how to think clearly in a world full of distraction. It was learning how to act consistently in a mind full of resistance. It was learning how to trust the process even when results were not immediate. That is a skill that compounds for life. And once you have it, no goal feels out of reach. Only a matter of time, effort, and patience. So continue, quietly, consistently, intentionally. Let your actions educate your mind. Let your discipline reshape your identity. Let your patience protect your progress. And remember this, you do not defeat cognitive bias by force. You defeat it by awareness, structure, and repeated choice. One day, then another, then another. This is the work, and this is the path.